The Eagles are 5-2, Rube, an amazing turnaround from. It wasn't that long ago we were sitting here like, is Nick Sirianni going to get fired? And all of a sudden they're 5-2. They're coming off a great game. It's a fun time to be in Philly.
Now we're wondering when he's going to get that contract extension. So things can change really quickly in the NFL, and there's a lot to be encouraged by from this football team.
This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. We're live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Yeah, it's amazing. This team, one big game, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, this is what everyone signed up for, and we have to see them do it consistently now. But that Cincinnati game has really changed the outlook of this team for a lot of people, and I think I'm one of them.
I think that's fair. And look, they're not a great team, but they're a talented team. Certainly on offense, they're pretty loaded, even without T. Higgins. And I think on top of it's like the Giants game and Browns game, we saw encouraging things, but you were like, it's the Giants and Browns. And I think the Bengals game kind of gave you like the sense that it doesn't really matter who they're playing. The Eagles are talented and they're playing well together. And to me, it was a signature win in that it was on the road. It was look, they had been playing really well. They'd won 3 of their last 4. It was really the first time this year. And certainly the Saints game, you got a little bit sense of that. But 3 in a row to cap that 3-game stretch with that performance on both sides of the ball. And I think that's what was most encouraging. It was every phase, and that's something we just hadn't seen.
Yeah, it was the most complete win of the season. So we're going to talk about what this win means in the context of the full season. A little bit later, we have a bunch of questions that came in on the email address. We talked to all 3 coordinators on Tuesday. We're recording this on Tuesday, so a lot of takeaways from them. But I do want to start with just the overall thoughts on this team and where they are, because it wasn't that long ago, like going into the bye week, they were in a bad spot. It was 2-2, but it felt worse than 2-2. The way they lost that Bucs game, really non-competitive, and even after the win against the Browns, it still didn't feel great. It was a tough win, a 4-point win over a team that they should have probably clobbered, and then you had all the weirdness with Nick Sirianni after it. But to then beat the Giants by 25, to beat the Bengals by 20, and have the most complete game, all of a sudden, I think we're starting to see the ceiling for this team.
Yeah, you're right. And I would throw in the Falcons, the way they lost to the Falcons, along with the way they lost to Tampa. They weren't just losing games. I mean, the Falcons game they gave away in the final seconds. And the Tampa game, I mean, they just weren't competitive for the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters, really. So, yeah, there was certainly a lot to 2-2. Didn't feel like 2-2 because the way those losses were just, and the wins weren't weren't too commanding either. So, they made good use of the bye week. It sure seems like. I mean, everything has gotten better since then, and they took it seriously, and they got a lot out of their self-scout, and they kind of look like a different team.
Yeah, and I think Sunday was the first time I watched this team and thought there might be a playoff run.
Yeah,
in this team.
Same.
And I hadn't, you looked at the team on paper in training camp, and that's in the back of your mind because there's a ton of talent on this roster, but there are a lot of questions too because you have this kind of an experiment with Nick Sirianni and 2 new coordinators and a lot of newness on both sides of the football, and you're wondering like how is it all going to come together, and you needed to see it in real games. It wasn't enough to just have the talent on the roster because they had a lot of talent on the 2023 roster, and that didn't save them. So you were just looking for a sign in the first 7 weeks of the season to think this is a team that could make a playoff run, potentially even have a Super Bowl ceiling, and you didn't see it. I felt like I saw that on Sunday, and that's not to say that they're going to go on that kind of run or they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but like it's the first time where if that's what you believe, you can convince me of it a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think the way they defended Joe Burrow, to me, he's an elite quarterback. He's a top, maybe not top 5, but close to it. He's up there, and that first drive, 70 yards, he's 11 for 12. They go 6 for 6 on 3rd down. And the way the defense bounced back from that, and that's from Vic down to the position coaches, down to the players. They all tightened everything up from that point. And that was what really kind of got me thinking, yeah, this could be a really good team, was just seeing the way they responded to that 70-yard drive that opened the game. So that was the first time I felt like we might be working into, well into January.
Yeah, I'll give you a little insight here from me. I was starting to think about planning a trip in February. I've pumped the brakes on that a little bit because I don't think it's realistic to think that they're gonna go this far, but it's possible. It's certainly possible.
So you might be back in those Superdome elevators.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Uh, but you know what the funny thing, you talked about the defense. I want to get into like what was more impressive in that game, the defense or the offense. But on the defense, I actually thought Joe Burrow played a pretty good game considering he was without one of his top targets. And I thought the Eagles just played better. Like they made him work for everything. He was making some really tough throws. The third downs on the first drive, like obviously not ideal to give up. What was it, 5 for 5 on third downs in that first drive?
6 for 6.
It was 6 for 6 on the first drive. Yeah, so it's like it obviously not ideal, but they're getting him into these third down situations. So you're thinking, okay, at least they're making him work for it a little bit. Eventually, hopefully, they get him off the field. Now there were some ugly moments, like the third and what was it 22. You don't want to see them convert that, but I mean, Joe Burrow is a good player. He's going to make some plays. They made it as tough on him as they could.
Yeah, I wasn't in love with the Bengals' offensive approach. I thought they ran it too much. They weren't having any success running the ball. They seemed really intent on trying to establish that. I thought their better matchups were throwing, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
It's not a Bengals podcast, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. But I mean, the run defense was terrific. And maybe they just. I don't know, but they kept trying to run it. They kept stuffing it. And this secondary, it's been, 2 years ago they had a really, really good pass defense. They're starting to look like it. They're maybe not quite at that level, but they got takeaways. They were knocking balls down. I thought the coverage, and they have other good receivers. I mean, the Princeton kid has had a nice start. But, I mean, you think about the job they did on Neighbors and then the job they did on Jamar Chase. I mean, those are two big-time guys. What did Neighbors have, 41 yards? And Chase had like 11 targets, 9 catches for 57, 58 yards. That's a combination of pressure and coverage, but the coverage has been so good with these young D-backs, and they're all young. I mean, Reed's only 25 and CJ's only 26, and then you have 2 rookies on top of that. That's a young secondary, and they're just getting better every week, and that was the biggest test they faced this year, and they were really up for it. They're fun to watch. I mean, there's been a lot of secondaries here that you're like, you kind of hold your breath, when the guy starts dropping back and chucking it deep, and you just feel like somebody's going to make a play out there.
I'm a little embarrassed about how many times I've watched the Cooper DeJean play on 4th and 1.
Give us a number, like 12? 8?
I've watched it over 12 times. Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I've watched it a ton. It's amazing. It's and it's fun watching it from the high angle and the end zone angle because all the pre-snap motion from Jamar Chase, he called it dancing around.
Right.
It like to stick with him, to have the eyes, and Vic Fangio talked about his eyes on that play. He knows it's going to him, and he's able to stick with him. He's able to avoid any possible like linebacker or defensive lineman, and then to actually stick him on that play. Gosh, he's an impressive player.
Yeah, I think I wrote my 10 obs after the game. I don't know if I remember seeing a personnel change have such an immediate and big impact.
Yeah, and it's probably unfair to say it's all on him. I think part of it is like the timing of it going against these offenses helped, and it gave them some confidence. But you're right, and we talked about it on the postgame pod. Just the physical element that this defense has now, it feels like it really kind of starts with their nickel corner, which is weird, but he's a bigger body. He's such a unique combination of size, speed, and short area quickness. Whereas, like, you see Avante, certainly the short area was always there, but he's not very big. And he's physical, but he's not big enough to really have that physicality pay dividends. And then, like, you think about Sidney Brown last year, who had some really good moments in the slot, like a bigger guy, physical, the short area quickness, not quite to the level of Cooper. So to see a Cooper DeJean who has all of those elements, it makes him such a unique player in that role, and that's why he's been so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and then you add like instincts on top of that, and intelligence and work ethic, and his preparation has been amazing. This guy, I mean, he hasn't played much football in the NFL, and he missed a big chunk of training camp. So what he's doing it's remarkable. It really is. He's playing at such a high level, and he had a bad snap? Has he had a play where he missed a tackle or
He dropped the pick.
he dropped a pick? But he was in the right place, So he that one was. You're not going to get many that easy. It was right there. And Burrow doesn't throw. He doesn't throw many. He threw one at the end of the game, but he's just been so solid. And I don't think we're overstating the impact he's made on the defense. I think it's been dramatic, and I think his physicality rubs off on the other guys. The whole defense has played better since he went in there, and I give Vic credit because I think a lot of coaches would, Avante's played a lot of football, and he was actually, he's playing. He wasn't playing that well, but he's had some good years here, and he's got a lot of reps in the slot. But Vic didn't hesitate to make the change, and it's paid off. Do you remember a personnel change, a lineup change, having that kind of immediate impact, that extreme?
Well, normally you don't have a player good enough for it to have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like typically you have a guy starting and then the backup. It just is like there's a deficiency in talent. This is a unique situation because he is obviously talented and he got set. He would have been. I think we all realize he would have been the starter if he had been healthy and training.
Sure.
So
yeah.
That's what makes it a unique situation is because you had this really talented player waiting in the wings. And look, Vic does deserve credit, but it was also a little bit of a no-brainer to go to Cooper DeJean in that moment.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like a quarterback getting benched has ever had. Randall getting benched for Rodney Pete in '95. I don't know. I've been racking my brain trying to think of a change like that. You're right.
And quarterback lends itself to that more, obviously.
Yeah, Garcia when Donovan got hurt in '06. I don't know. Donovan wasn't playing bad. I don't know, but it's yeah. You can see why they considered him a first-round talent.
Yeah, and I think back to when they made those two picks. Obviously, Quinyon Mitchell was the better player, right? They had him graded higher. That's why they took him. But I think there are just people in that building who love Cooper DeJean. And maybe they didn't think he was a better player than Quinyon Mitchell, but I got the sense that there were people in that building who were more excited when they landed Cooper DeJean.
Because they didn't they didn't think there was any chance they were going to get him at 40.
Yeah.
And that they'd be able to trade up there. And I actually just found my story I think my headline was like, draft day miracle, Eagles land Cooper DeJean in second round or something, and that's how we felt that day in April.
And these things always don't work out. Like sometimes there's a reason the rest of the league has told you their opinion on a player.
I'd like to know what their thinking was. He's a first round talent to me.
He's played like it. I think and I think it's stupid if it's because he's a nickel only, because there's plenty of examples of like Trent McDuffie has kind of been a nickel only, but he's been such a tremendous player that but maybe there was
that might be it.
But it was probably we think he's a good player. We don't know where he fits at the NFL level, and I understand why that would be a reason. Whereas Quinyon was a clear outside corner. He's going to be a starter in this league as a boundary corner.
I think Cooper could play outside corner. I think he could be okay at it, but he's in a perfect spot for him. I think he could play safety. Safeties don't get drafted in the first round, so that could be it.
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes.
And sometimes they're good.
Yeah, rarely. Eagles have never taken one in the first round.
They never have.
Yeah.
They could have taken one a few years ago who's pretty darn good.
Yeah, oops.
Maybe, yeah. This kind of leads us to my big question. After a couple...
It's time for Dave's big question. We should make that like a regular segment.
I like that. Have like a graphic flash on the
like
screen.
a cartoon, Dave's big moment. Yeah, you can work on that finer.
All right, so big question. A few days after that game, what is more impressive and encouraging from that performance? Is it the offense or is it the defense?
For me, it's the defense because I've always felt like the pieces were in place for the offense to be really good, to be a 30 points per game group. I just had so many questions about the defense, and there were so many new pieces, so many new starters, new staff. New staff on offense too, but they had all the pieces back on offense from what was a decent offense for most of last year. I didn't know about the defense. I really didn't know how it was going to come together. On paper, I thought, if this happens, they have a chance to be good. But all those things have happened. They've all happened faster than I expected. And they're playing better than I thought they would. So To me, that's the most encouraging thing is how quickly that defense has come together. And getting up 2 touchdowns in their last 3 games, you can't do better than that. Well, you give up 1, I guess.
I'm glad we didn't talk about this before because I disagree. To me, it was the offense because you're right. Like they had the talent to put together this performance, but it's week 8. It's not like this season just started. And I think if this team is going to go where they want to go, the offense is going to have to be elite. Like, and to see the quarterback play the game he did, like that's really big too. They're going to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes them, and it was more than just not turning the ball over in the Bengals game. It was one of the best games we've ever seen him play. He was quick. He was decisive. He had 1 turnover-worthy play, and after that, he was lights out. He was getting the ball to his playmakers. It was just a really efficient performance. He looked good running the football. He looked quick and decisive passing the football. So for me, it was the offense.
So there's one thing I disagree with. I think that this defense could be good enough that they can win games without the offense being elite. Like you look at the Cleveland game. I mean, the offense scored, 21? But the defense was the story of that game. Granted, it was against a bad offense and a bad quarterback. But I think they might be at the point where they can win a game 20-17.
In the regular season, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Now, you get into the playoffs, you're not going to face offenses like the Browns. They're not going to be around in the playoffs.
But you're not going to win a Super Bowl without both sides being elite. But yeah, I guess you could win a 41-38 game, but which we've seen in the Super Bowl. But I feel like the defense is good enough that the offense doesn't have to be great to win a game.
You might be right, but it was just such an encouraging performance
Sure.
by that offense. And Kellen Moore finally broke out a lot of different stuff. Like it was a fun game to watch. Whereas they've had good offensive performances over the last few years, but it's like, yeah, of course, like A.J. Brown just does what A.J. Brown does, and Devontae Smith does what Devontae Smith does. This game felt like a little more than that. And they certainly still rely on one-on-ones. Like when they get a one-on-one with A.J. or Devontae, they're going to take it, and they're probably going to win it, and that's going to help them. But they're setting that up with other things. Like you have I've been kind of on this under center thing because I think it's a really important.
Hadn't noticed.
It's a really important tool for this offense, and they ran 21 snaps from under center, and that's a little skewed because of the tush pushes and obviously the flow of the game. They're running late, but running under center has been really big for them, and it's setting up the play action game. A lot of the play action was not from under center in this game, but you can see the chess game for the season. That was a big step for them to put the under center on the tape, because then you can play off of it.
And one thing Kellen said to us, I think it was before the season, it might have been well before the season, that we're going to see things later in the season that we haven't seen. And that's so important for an offense. By week 14, teams have 13 games of film to watch, and if you're giving them unscouted looks that late in the season, I mean, that's huge to be able to do that. And you're going to take advantage of some confusion on defense. And I think that's something Kellen, we know he's aware of it, and we know it sure looks like he's doing it. So I think there's going to be more of that. I think there's a little bit more each week that he likes to add into, take out of his bag, deep out of his bag, and we're starting to see that.
Yeah, and the play action is something that you're probably getting tired of me talking about it earlier in the season, because it's there's no reason for them to not run play action, especially when you have a running back like Saquon Barkley, and it was such a big deal that the Devontae touchdown obviously off of the play action. And I was glad that Kellen Moore gave a nice shout-out to Jack Stoll. You go back and watch that. Jack Stoll is one-on-one blocking for a long time.
I think you said 10 seconds.
It wasn't quite 10 seconds, but
that's what Kellen said.
It felt like that, I'm sure, because for a tight end to hold up as well as he did, it was a big deal.
Yeah, that's the kind of play that everything has to work. I mean, 11 guys go into that play, and they're good at it. I mean, they've got 11 40-yard plays now. It's the most in the league. And certainly Saquon's a part of that, but the deep ball is also a big part of that. They're really good at it, and it's a nice weapon to have. And there's more than one guy who can catch those balls. There's 2. There's not 3. There's 2, though.
There might be 3. Grant Calcaterra gets in that mix.
Yeah, but he's not catching deep balls. He's catching mid-range balls and running really fast. I messaged Dave last night. I was like, do you realize Grant Calcaterra has as many catches of 19 yards or more as Travis Kelce? And Kelsey's had a few more targets than him, but that's what an impact Calcaterra's made. I wonder if there's a role for him when Dallas gets back.
Possibly, but it's going to be a little tough to find targets for him.
Yeah, but I mean, he's
but
a
we
weapon.
know they'll be in 12 here and there.
Yeah, but he's got a real knack for big plays. It's not a narrative I expected to be writing about and talking about.
Yeah, well, it's such a change from last year where Jack Stoll was clearly ahead of him. And look, Stoll is still a better blocker. Like, no question about it. And that's what they wanted out of it last year. But in a situation like this where you're without Dallas Goedert, it does make sense to have Grant be the pass catching option.
Yeah. And, I mean, you'd love to have one guy that catches the ball like Grant and blocks like Stoll. I guess Dallas is that guy.
Yeah, that's why he's one of the better tight ends in the league. Yeah. You want to talk about linebackers a little bit. And this is a point we brought up on the post-game pod, that it's kind of amazing to see them get this level of play from these linebackers, because we had no idea really what to expect from them going into this season. And on paper, it's probably, like, on paper before the season, probably their weakest spot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we both agreed on that. And, yeah, it was funny because, I mean, the usual caveat, Pro Football Focus, it's very useful for some things. The grades you take with a grain of salt. But I looked at the defensive grades, and the top two guys off Sunday's game were Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean. They were both over 90.
They were the top inside backers
in the league
total,
yeah,
according to PFF. So, like, obviously grain of salt, but it's like guys aren't having bad games and being up there.
Right, exactly. So, you know, and you think about all the linebackers this team has gone through over the years. Even last year, you know, some of the guys they were running out there, they're not even in the league anymore. So you get Zach Bond, who's never played the position, and Nakobe, who's played very little because he didn't play as a rookie and he was hurt most of last year. And Nakobe had his ups and downs early this season. And, you know, he's still going to –
He's had, like, by my count, he's had 2 bad games, which isn't nothing. Like, that's a problem.
Tampa and what was the other one?
New Orleans, right? Well, no, New Orleans was a good game. Which game am I thinking of?
Falcons?
Yeah.
Yeah, or Packers. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, and I think Vic's getting to understand what he does well, and he's always going to be an up and down player, I think, but if he can play consistently like he did Sunday, man, the things he does well, he does really well, and his tackling has been better. So yeah, he hasn't been out of position, and I think that's really with him. The tackling issues were coming up when he was out of position, when he was late getting somewhere, so he had a bad angle. So it's been impressive, and you know, for this team to land 2 linebackers who are productive, it's rare. I thought in 17, you know, Nigel Bradham played well and Kendricks played well, and they had who's the other? Who they bring in?
Well, they had Jordan Hicks for half that.
Jordan Hicks for half a year. So they had good linebacker play that year, but it's been few and far between.
Were you a big Donnell Ellerbe fan?
He got a Super Bowl ring at 17. Mm-hmm. They got him from the Giants.
Who was their middle linebacker before they brought in Ellerbe?
I don't know.
Joe Walker.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That seems like so long ago.
It was a long time ago. But I've been impressed by Nakobe. Yeah, he had a bad game in week 1 against the Packers, and then the Tampa game was rough. But and I think there's still some deficiencies in his game that we've talked about. But earlier we mentioned that Cooper DeJean brings that physicality to the defense. I mean, so does Nakobe. Both these linebackers do, but like Nakobe really does, because his hits are so fierce.
Yeah. And
he's like, him running downhill is fun to watch.
Yeah. And Zach Bond's a guy I didn't know anything about when they signed him. I just thought he was a camp guy or something. And you looked at his career, he had, you know.
Well, I thought he'd have a role, and I didn't think this was it.
Yeah. Well, then once you started to see him, I'll never forget that first day when we looked out there and he's like, "What's he doing at all? Why is he there?" And then we thought it was somebody was hurt, right? And we thought it was.
Well, Nakobe wasn't really back yet.
Yeah, Nakobe wasn't. That's what it was, and. He's been really, really solid. I mean, he's been a real find, and that's Vic just kind of seeing a few snaps of him playing off-ball linebacker and saying I think he can do it.
It's a pretty impressive projection.
It sure is, because there's not a lot of film on that. And
I honestly, I don't think that's what the front office expected from Zach Bond. You look back at his time with New Orleans when they tried to play him at inside backer, it didn't work. And the only time he really started to show some juice was when they lined him up as an edge rusher. And the whole offseason we're talking about this guy wants to rush the passer. Yeah. That's what he has a chance to be good at. And then to see him just kind of thrive as an inside backer is really fun to watch.
Yeah, he's a fun player to watch. He really hustles. He's around the ball. He just kind of finds the play. He's one of those guys who just kind of gets there and makes the play. He's had a couple of missed tackles early, but he's cleaned that up too. And biggest surprise on defense?
Linebackers in general.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a few, but certainly he's at the top of that list. He's been really good.
Yeah, I would put them on a ticket together as one of the most pleasant surprises of this season. And it's a big enough body of work now that
sure.
Like, it's not going to drop off completely. Like, they might have some bad games, and there might be moments where you see, like, Nakobe in coverage and you go, well, that's not great. But at the very least, you feel like you're going to get a competent level of play at linebacker with minimal resources invested in these two guys for the rest of the season.
The next thing they got to do is get Zach Bond signed to a contract, I would think. I'd like to get him a little extension.
Yeah, I wonder if he'd be willing to do that now.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure Howie would like to do it.
Yeah, and I think it would be a wise decision.
I don't think it would be a huge guy looking for a huge number, so I think it might be doable.
Yeah, it's fun to watch those two guys fill up the stat sheet, too.
It is.
They're both, where are they in tackles right now? They are, I'm going to look this up. They have to be up there together. Let's see. Combined tackles, Zach Bond has 69, Nakobe's has 58.
Are they 1 and 2?
They're 1 and 2 on the team. Nakobe has 7 tackles for loss and 5 quarterback hits.
Yeah, those are good numbers. Those are impressive numbers.
And it was cool after the game. Nakobe told us that once Zach Bond punched that football out and Nakobe recovered it, he ran it right over to Zach Bond on the sideline, handed it to him. It was a big moment for them.
Yeah. They play well together. They seem to have a good energy together. I don't know what the word is, but they
complement each other?
That too.
Okay. Is that what you're going for now?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I don't think that was the exact word I was looking for, but
okay.
it probably works better than the one I was looking for.
Peanut butter and jelly?
Sure.
That's one of Nakobe's favorite foods, peanut butter and jelly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I talked to his mom about it a few years ago for that story.
What's he like? Like on white bread?
I don't remember. But she told me that he'll think a house has no food if there's not peanut butter and jelly in it.
Well, your former professor, my former colleague, Phil Anastasia, would always bring a PB&J to the vet for lunch, and he would open up his foil that was around, and he'd hold it up and go, peanut butter and jelly, an American classic.
Are you a PB&J guy?
Sure.
Grape or strawberry?
Grape.
Oh, we agree on that.
The only thing in the world we agree on is our peanut butter and jelly
and if it had to be anything, I'm glad that's what it is. All right, let's take a little break. We'll get back. We'll mention some coordinator takeaways and also a bunch of questions from listeners.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table.
All right, we're back, Rube. We're live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. We talked to Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, and Michael Clay today. Honestly, not a lot of questions for Michael Clay. It was a very clean day, special teams-wise. They didn't even get to return a punt in that game. But Vic Fangio, some interesting things to say.
Yeah, he always does. He's very honest. He was asked about the trade deadline, which is coming up, and I really like what he said. He said, Because you look at the Eagles' trade deadline moves, Howie's tried, and certainly J.J. worked out, but you look at Robert Quinn. Golden Tate caught that ball in Chicago when he ran the wrong route. Didn't know the play. Did have a game-winning touchdown in a playoff game. But, Robert Quinn and Jannard Avery, there's been a lot of misses. And you're giving up.
Kevin Byard last year.
You're giving up, mid-range picks for these guys. And Vic said, unless the player kind of has a relationship with the coach or the coordinator, it's really hard to come in the middle of the season and play well. And he kind of was saying, like, I don't need anybody. I like what I have. But it's true. I think it's really hard to make it work. And he talked about it's easier for some positions. Certainly I think edge rusher, running back are positions that you can do it. Not that the Eagles' edge rushers they brought in have done anything, but just in the big picture. But he said other positions are really hard, and that we've seen that. So I have a feeling Howie. I don't think there's any glaring needs right now. So I'd be surprised if Howie does anything significant. Might be minor moves, but I think the body of work there with at least with this team, it's not a good one.
Yeah, and Vic talked about there's a difference between like a rental type of trade versus like a big swing of a player that is going to be here for the next few years, who's in his prime. There's a difference there, and he said that makes more sense in some ways than the rental player.
Yeah, you're going to get the guy for 9 games. Avery was here for a few years. I don't remember if he had years left on his contract.
Yeah, he did. He had. It was basically like a year and a half.
Yeah, he didn't do anything. He's still in the league, which is crazy.
He's with the Colts now.
Yeah, but
I believe. I haven't been following Jannard Avery that closely, but
Jay woke up at 4:45 this morning. He's like, I got to see where Jannard Avery's playing. But yeah, I generally don't. I'm not in love with those type of deals, and J.J. was perfect for what that team needed. They had Blunt, they had Corey Clement. The three of them combined for something like 271 scrimmage yards in the Super Bowl. But he was on his last legs, literally, with those knees. But they got him for what they needed.
I guess we're all on our last legs, though.
Would never get new legs?
Yeah.
Well, some people might get
That's true.
Like a prosthetic or something. But most of us won't do that. I'll be surprised if Howie's active.
Yeah, and for the record, you mentioned that Vic said some positions are easier than others. The two he said are really tough are linebacker and safety, and I think he's talking specifically about his defense.
Sure.
He said, corner is doable and defensive line is doable. They're certainly not going to trade for more corners. Defensive line, maybe, but they're getting good play from Sweat now. They're getting good play from Nolan Smith. Bryce Huff is at least a playable player at this point. Brandon Graham's playing well, so hard to find a lot of snaps. And then, not what Vic said, but on offense, I don't know. They already made their trade deadline move before the season when they got Dotson.
Yeah, I mean that would be the only thing would be a receiver, and you're not going to try again. So I don't really see a pressing need for anything, and Howie likes to keep his draft picks. I don't think he's crazy about the return on any of those guys.
Other stuff from Vic Fangio, anything that stood out to you?
I mean, I love everything he says. Why don't you give me one?
Okay. He was asked about the green dot and what it takes. And he said some guys don't like it.
That was interesting.
Yeah, which is true. Some players they just want to worry about their responsibility. They don't want to have to relay the play. Nakobe Dean, he takes pride in being a middle linebacker. He's always taken pride in that. I remember doing a really fun story with him last year where the rest of the defense was learning how to understand him because he has such a thick accent. But he really does love having the green dot. Now, there are a few plays where he comes off the field and Zach Bond is out there. And unless it's Vic said, end of a half when they're in dime, they can switch helmets. Right. But otherwise, it's hand signals from Bobby King, the linebackers coach, into Zach Bond, who then relays the play.
I found that really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
because I had been wondering what they're doing on those, because when they're in dime, Zach Bond stays on the field.
Yeah, so, I mean, Nakobe's playing almost all the snaps, but basically Vic said if we know Nakobe's not going to come in, if there's 2 snaps left, then Zach will get the helmet. If not, I mean, you can't just keep changing helmets in the middle of a drive. So they would do hand signals. They would do it old-fashioned way. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Looking at my notes here from Vic Fangio, we talked about tackling a little bit, and it didn't say a ton of interesting things about it, but the tackling is really shored up. It's something that we talk about a ton when they're missing them, and probably not enough when they're not missing them, but they've been a much better tackling team.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's any one thing. I do think that when you understand the defense better, you're going to play faster, and when you play faster, you're going to be in better position to make those tackles. It could be as simple as that, because they have guys that are. And look, I don't want to keep ripping on Avante here, but Cooper DeJean's a better tackler. He's better at a lot of things, but he's really helped. And I mean, the Kobe's gotten better at it, so. That was a big concern. I mean, there was that one game they missed like 19 tackles.
It was bad. I think it was 16 by their count.
Yeah, I had 19.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
No, they've done a much better job. Doesn't mean there won't be a game at some point where it pops back up, but yeah. And this was a defensive thing, not a Vic Fangio thing. Curious to see what happens when they finally face another good run attack. Because these last 2 weeks, they've been great against the run.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the Giants really don't have much in that way. You can go back to the Browns. They
That
didn't
rookie
have
from
much.
Purdue's got a little juice.
A little bit.
I think he got hurt last night. Didn't come back in, but he's a little not
Certainly
bad.
the Bengals early in the year were running the ball well. They haven't recently.
Yeah. They just their running game seemed really desultory to me. They just kind of running into the middle. I didn't see a lot of interesting runs.
What was that word?
Desultory.
That's a new one for me.
Look it up.
Desultory.
DESUL. Did I
It's when
make
you
it
want
up?
dessert.
No, that's desertory.
Desultory?
Yeah.
Lacking a plan, purpose, or enthusiasm. I like that. A few people were left dancing in desultory fashion. Oh man, that's a weird sentence to be the.
Don't you think? Yeah, that's an odd. That's
That's a very weird.
Why would that be the example?
I don't know.
The Bengals' running game was desultory. Is probably a better
Probably
example.
better, yeah.
But doesn't that kind of explain? I don't know. It just didn't have any. Because I mean, Chase Brown has been not bad, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna find a way to use that soon.
I'm sure you'll be able to next podcast.
Kellen Moore didn't want to offer up a whole lot,
No.
but he did. He talked about like being a little more multiple, because they certainly were. Like the play action and stuff that I've harped on too much probably, but it has made an impact.
Yeah, it really has, especially if you're going to be. Yeah, I mean it has. It's been a positive.
He mentioned that Devontae play. He gave credit to Jack Stoll, but he also said something that caught my interest a little bit. He said sometimes you have a play that's kind of hanging around your play sheet for too long.
Yeah.
And you're looking for the right moment, and that was one of those plays. And it was something Devontae had been pushing for to get that play run, and it paid off in a big way.
Yeah, he said it's been in there a few weeks. Did he say?
Yeah, they ran it once before, he said.
Yeah. I asked him about Jalen's newfound, avoidance of interceptions. He didn't really say anything about that.
Well, it is a big deal.
Jalen's playing well. He's worked hard. But yeah, Kellen doesn't. I feel like during the summer, Kellen would give you a little bit more, but he doesn't say a whole lot. I think he's doing a good job, though.
Yep, gave some kudos to Fred, Big Fred, after Fred Johnson for his play on Trey Hendrickson, and he did allow that they did certain things to help him at times, and we talked about it on the postgame pod, but there were still moments where Fred Johnson's he's got to block him,
Yeah.
and he did.
We talked about biggest surprises on defense, but I mean, the way Fred pass blocked on Sunday was he has not pass blocked well, and that came. Yeah, but I give Stoutland so much credit. I mean, he gets the most out of what he has every single time.
Yeah, he really does. And there were some big plays the Eagles hit because Fred was able to just hang in there and block one of the best pass rushers in the entire league. I mean, certainly to me, one of the more underrated players in the entire league. And you can probably tell I am stalling because I have a really good stat here from, oh man, where'd it go? Insights. There it is. Okay. Fred Johnson in that game allowed just 1 pressure on 22 pass blocking snaps, 4.5%, his lowest pressure rate of the season. And against Trey Hendrickson, 1 pressure in 13 matchups.
Yeah, those are great numbers. And, adding to that is that was the team he came up with. He wasn't very good when he played there. He and Trey Hendrickson are teammates, former teammates. And it's got to be really cool to go back and play the Bengals in that stadium where he started a few games at left tackle and I think one at guard. And he said, never put me at guard. But, it was that was huge. I mean, that performance enabled the offense to do a lot of things that they wouldn't have been able to do if he didn't play well.
Mm-hmm. Think he gets paid in the offseason?
It's a good question.
I don't know if he's put enough out there. But I could see another team wanting him.
He's got 2 more starts, I think. 2 more games till Jordan's eligible, and I don't even know if Jordan will, immediately come back and play. So, left tackle guys who can play left tackle get money.
Mm-hmm.
They get paid. So if he keeps up the way he has, I mean, you saw with Big V. I mean, he made himself a lot of money. That Super Bowl run, that playoff run. He played a little more. I mean, he played. I can't remember. JP got hurt like in November, I think. But, yeah, he could get paid.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all I have from Kellen Moore. Anything from Michael Clay today? It was such a clean special teams game that, I didn't even have any questions for Michael Clay today.
Yeah, people were asking him questions just to ask questions. I didn't ask him any. The first time the Eagles have not returned a punt, or the Eagles' opponent has not punted, is a better way to put it, in a game that the Eagles won since 1947. Jeff McClain already did it. So.
He did. And you mentioned that stat while we were in the auditorium, and I was good. I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Jeff asked.
I might have shot you a look.
Jeff asked what it was like to cover that game. Mm-hmm. But he waited like half a minute, and it was kind of a late.
He did. I think eventually he's like, I got to do it.
Yeah.
Which I understand. I've been in that position before.
Yeah. I didn't really cover that game. I was off that week.
All right. All right, let's get the questions.
I was covering the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets that year. All right, questions.
If you have a question for us, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. We'll get to the first one here from Owen. Hi, Dave and Rube. Love the pod. Would the Eagles consider starting Isaiah Rodgers over Slay? I love Slay, but it seems the defense gets better the younger it is.
Well, I think next year is the time for that. Now, Isaiah Rodgers is not signed past this year. Slay's hurt. We haven't gotten any updates, have we?
It's a groin. The only update we got was actually from him on his podcast that he was getting an MRI. Hopeful that he'll be able to play this week, but we don't know. And maybe it's like if this is going to be a soft tissue that lingers for a little while, maybe it is better to give him a couple weeks off.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought. I think he's playing pretty well. He's not the Slay that he used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been fine. He's given us some plays this year, but
you're not going to make that change. If Slay's healthy, he's
a captain too.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah,
but not to take anything away from Isaiah. He's when he went in there, I mean, he made a great play down the sideline on Jamar Chase, and CJ was there to finish it off. But
yeah, think about last year, how long it took them to bench James Bradbury, who was a complete liability.
Yeah,
Slay's nowhere near that bad.
Different staff, but yeah.
Same head coach.
Same head coach. But Slay's playing way better than Bradbury did last year. Bradbury looks like he's getting healthy, too, so he could be in that equation. Oh, he's a safety now.
He's safety, yeah. But I think back to last year when that guy was outside of the NovaCare with, the trash cans, and he labeled one Bradbury and one Slay, which was kind of unoriginal and stupid, but
it's like guilt by association.
Yeah, and I had Slay had to be like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?
He's the one that can't play, not me."
Gosh, what are you thinking? Next question here from David. Hey there, Dave and Rube. I love the podcast. I've been listening to it for 3 years. Thanks for going through these, and I appreciate your dedication you bring to the podcast each week. A Bengals game question. Awesome game against the Bengals. I thought it was the most well-coached game since the 2022 seasons. What are your thoughts about the Sirianni Sweat interaction on the sideline after the 2-minute warning? It seems like he was telling Josh that the starters were not going back in while trying to unbuckle his chin strap. chin strap, but Sweat was not having any of it. And also, Brandon Graham seemed to be telling Nick to calm down. Definitely not a huge deal, but man, it just seems like Nick can't stay out of his own way. FYI, I'm a big Nick Sirianni fan. Now, have you seen this clip?
I did not see it. I was sitting. The guys I was sitting with, the post game guys saw it. I was kind of hunched over my laptop at the end of the game.
Yeah, to me, it was a nothing burger. It was Sweat wanted to go back in the game. He had his helmet like on, and Nick walked by and tried to undo the chin strap to say, "Hey, you're done. We're not putting you back in the game." And Sweat like kind of pushed him away a little bit. I think he wanted to play. That's fine.
Well, he wanted a sack in a fourth straight game.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That interaction is totally fine with me. It didn't escalate and yeah, I'd rather have a guy who wants to go back in the game than a guy who's like, nah, I'm good.
Saquon said, "Nah, I'm good," but you liked it.
Yeah, obviously a little different situation.
They're both at the end of the game.
Yeah, but Saquon, it was like showing selflessness that there were other guys. Like, the other guys don't get to play when Saquon plays. There's a rotation at defensive end. They all play.
Well, Jalix Hunt could have gone in. I mean,
yeah.
So Sweat could have said, let Jalix eat. I'm good.
It wasn't about going after a record, though.
Well,
you don't see the difference here.
A sack in 4 straight games. Oh, I see the difference. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate that.
Let's take the next question.
From Jonathan.
It's more similar than you think, though.
It really isn't. Hey guys, as always, I love the show and the banter between the two of you. I still crack up every time Rube asks Dave to buy him time to look something up and then never stops talking.
I've never done that.
I've been
Gainwell actually probably plays more than Jalix. Anyway, go ahead.
There's only 3 running backs.
Read the question.
I've been a very harsh critic of Jalen Hurts since the end of his second year, and especially the end of last year and the beginning of this season. I need to give him credit for the past couple games. Jalen has stopped turning the ball over carelessly and has made some smart decisions and decisive throws and throwaways. His running has looked better as well, and he looks fast again. I have a question for both of you. Do you think there might be an impending competition at right guard? Tyler Steen has been performing exceptionally well lately and could be a more cost-effective option compared to Mekhi Becton for the future.
I think Becton's going to play right guard, when he's healthy. I would assume he'll be cleared this week. I mean, beyond this year, who knows? I just don't know. I like Tyler Steen. I think Becton's pretty good.
I do too. I've got another Tyler Steen question. I want to get to it right now. Jerry, longtime listener, first-time caller, which isn't really a caller, it's more of an emailer. So much has been made of the defense playing better since Cooper DeJean started playing nickel, but nobody talks about Jalen playing better with Tyler Steen at right guard. More decisive passes, less scrambling, using the middle of the field. Is Mekhi Becton really too tall to play guard, or something else entirely?
I think it's more about Jalen not forcing passes. I don't think the right guard has a direct. In this case, I don't think the right guard personnel really has anything to do with how Jalen's playing. I think he looked at his play before the bye and realized he was forcing passes when guys weren't open, throwing it to traffic, not using his other receivers, and he fixed it. I think that's what it is.
In fairness, it's like really one good game, like really good game from Jalen.
Yeah,
the Bengals game, and I know,
but it hasn't had any bad games either.
Yeah, and I know Tyler Steen was in there for that, but I don't think it's completely nothing that like tall guards make things difficult at times, just because Jalen isn't the tallest guy. I think there is something to that, but to say it's like that's the reason Jalen had a good game, I think is pushing it a little too far.
I do think if Becton hadn't gotten a concussion coming out of the Giants game, they might have started him at left tackle. We'll never know. And it's not going to happen now.
I don't think they would have.
I think they might have. They might have made that change if he struggled in the game, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, but the Tyler Steen thing is fascinating to me because I do agree he's played pretty well. Honestly, both of his penalties are, I don't really.
Yeah,
I thought the holding was a little ticky-tacky. And
yeah,
then
it was very ticky-tacky, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then the unnecessary roughness, like, I understand the point there, but Nick actually talked about that play. He said, like, he wanted to get clarification on that because they want their guys to push for extra yards. The issue there, apparently,
the running start.
It was the running start from Tyler Steen. He was not in the play, and he put himself in the play, and that's why it was called. So, a good lesson there. But like I don't
guess.
like really fault him too much.
No, it's not like he put his head down and sprinted into the play. He just kind of
And a whistle there should have been blown.
yeah. That's the big issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so weird because the Eagles have had like a bunch of these plays with the whistle, where it's like sometimes it helps them and sometimes it hurts them.
Right.
What do we have here? Next question from Yanev, I believe it is. I hope I get that right. Hi, guys. Just wanted to thank you for the awesome podcast week after week. It's something my boys, 13 and 9, and I look forward to hearing on Monday mornings when I drive them to school. We are 7 hours ahead, so we watch all the 1 p.m. games live and wake up at 5 a.m. to see the Eagles when they play late games. We have never missed a game. My biggest concern...
Wait, so their kids go to school at 3 a.m.? No, I just got confused.
My biggest concern, that's not how time works. My biggest concern coming into this week was Jalen Hurts. I didn't think that he ever looked comfortable or even close to what he looked like in 22 when he was almost MVP. Is it fair to say that if he continues to perform close to what he looked like versus Cincinnati, that this team is a true Super Bowl contender?
His former Eagles quarterbacks coach Ryan Day on the big TV. I think if the way Jalen played in 2022, they were a Super Bowl contender and they went there. If he can play the way he has with this roster around him, yeah, they're a legit contender. And it's like you look at other teams, and other teams aren't perfect either, and we have a tendency to like kind of glorify these other teams because we don't see them all the time. But I don't know if there's a team, if Jalen plays the way he did Sunday and the guys around him play the way they did, there's not a team they can't beat if they play that well. Now, there's teams that can beat them too if they play that well. So I think you look around the NFC, and I'll tell you, I think I texted you this, that Hail Mary that Washington hit against the Bears. My initial reaction when I was actually driving up 95, I was actually stuck in traffic on 95 after the game. And I was like, that play could cost the Eagles the division title. They'd be in first place now.
What do you think this week is like for 29?
Not good. Yeah, that was. You don't go for the interception there. You just try to. Well, he was just. Yeah, that was a disaster. You got to box out. Just knock the ball down. But anyway.
Yeah, and maybe get away from the sideline a little earlier.
Yeah, and don't taunt anybody before the play. If you're going to taunt, do it after the play.
If the Eagles had a player make that play, who would it be? We know the answer. Never mind. We'll move on.
CJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question from DJ. Hey, guys, love the pod. Random brain teaser. Which of these three are the most likely? So there's three scenarios here. Number one, Ben Van Sumeren is a full-time fullback / special teams player next year. No linebacker snaps in a game or practice. Number two, the Eagles make an in-season trade for an impact player at a position that is not the defensive line. Three, Sirianni, Fangio, and Moore are all on the staff next year.
Which is most likely? Well, I'd say C.
They're all back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Because like even if things go really well, there's no guarantee that Kellen Moore gets a job elsewhere.
Sure. And yeah, and Van Sumeren, I think they still like him as a linebacker prospect.
And honestly, if he really works out and they see the value of having a fullback in the offense, I think they'd go get a fullback.
Yeah. I think that's true. But yeah, it's possible.
Mm-hmm. How would you rank them?
3, 2, 1.
I think I'm with you there. I don't know what position it would be.
Yeah, but I mean, now he likes making moves, so it is possible.
Yeah, and like knock on wood, but there's always the possibility there's an injury before and make a move from there, right?
It's not wood.
Is it not wood?
It's not wood.
Okay. What do we have here?
I don't know.
I have one more here.
Okay.
This is from Pet Shop Eddie.
Pet Shop Eddie.
Yep. Hello. Okay, I'll get to the question, but first, love you guys. The awkward tension between you is the best entertainment I can get weekdays for free, so thanks. Actually, that's what my question is about. There could be a case made that you guys really don't like each other very much, and that you kind of fake it through the podcast. Don't get me wrong, I love it. It's a small part of why you guys are so good, especially when Dave seems pretty annoyed by Rube's tangents and overall lack of formal preparation. So will there be a 30 for 30 in 15 years breaking down the behind-the-scenes tension and arguments between the talent of the Eagle Eye podcast? Maybe it will be called Caught in the Talons. What if I told you? I simply cannot wait to watch it.
No, we get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do. We don't go fishing together.
No.
We ever go fishing together?
No.
No.
We've gone to concerts before.
Yeah.
Used to hang out on the road.
Yeah, I don't make the road trips anymore.
Yeah.
Which he's happy about. No, we get along great.
Yeah. All right. You have anything else here? Any final thoughts?
No.
Okay, this is where I tell everyone if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Thanks to Rivers Casino Philadelphia for having us out again on a Tuesday. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.